Good morning, all of you. For today's webinar on basic understanding of induction motors and applications, we have a resource person, a renowned resource person, J. Srinivasan sir. On behalf of Sharad Institute of Technology, I welcome him for this session. Also, I welcome our Executive Director, Honorable Anil Bagane sir, and our Principal, Dr. S. A. Khote sir. I express my sincere gratitude to Bagane sir and Khote sir for their motivation and support for conducting such type of events. So before start this session, we introduce Srinivasan sir. We give brief introduction about Srinivasan sir. Srinivasan sir complete his graduate in physics from Madras University. He has 42 years of experience in the area of motor dimensioning, motor testing and inspection, on-site efficiency testing and analysis of motors, power quality audits and solutions for harmonic and voltage quality. He also engaged in training and orientation programs. He also engaged in energy conservation and recognized as a national level energy efficiency expert. He also has professional experience in marketing, dimensioning, and commissioning of electric motors and motor systems. He has hands-on experience in designing other motor system components such as drivers, starter package, uh, relays, bearing, power transmission elements, and he also expertise in vibration analysis, noise, and their thermal measurements. He also associated with energy efficiency services for National Motor Replacement Programs, CII, NPC, International Copper Association, and many NGOs in field of energy efficiency in India. So before start of this session, I request our principal, Dr. S. A. Khote sir, to brief about this webinar and introduce our college. Thank you.
Thank you, Khade sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot. On behalf of Sharad Institute of Technology, College of Engineering, EDRA, I welcome. Just take first slide. First slide. J's slide. Just keep as it is. Okay. Since last 2 semesters, we are trying to invite this JS sir. As just that Professor Khade has very briefly introduced our today's resource person, who is popularly known as a JS in motor industry. He is recognized in India as one of the experts in motors. Wherever any problem arises in any industry, when anybody needs any solutions, everybody approaches this JS sir, and he has been working as a consultant at number of the industries, number of the government agencies. Even while doing the IS code here and there, his views, his points were recorded, and on the basis amendments are being done. He is recognized at the international level also, at a number of the countries he is visiting, and he is guiding, and he is very much interested to give to the society whatever the knowledge, expertise he earned through his experience of around 30-40 years, so that he wanted to share among the students, share among the different stakeholders. So since last 1 year I am in contact with the JS sir, but in last semester we could not get exact his time as well as availability, and after that, because of the COVID here and there, it got cancelled. 2-3 times at the Department of Mechanical as well as Electrical, we have decided to invite him. Accordingly, we had words with him also, and he has assured, I don't want anything from your end, just invite me, I will deliver the session for the students. Like that, his attitude. And I had attended that because of this COVID, I got opportunity to attend his webinars at a number of the platforms. Almost 10 webinars I had attended, and specifically on the this your motor power quality. Everywhere he has that expertise, and he has the novelty of presenting in the different way. No, but today what I requested him, instead of going in the depth at the initial level, we'll start from the basic. No doubt we are teaching this electric motors, induction motor, varieties, classification, everything in the classroom. but whatever we teach, whatever is in our curriculum, and whatever the basics sir is going to present, that would be definitely different. And you will love that the way how he present, the way how he has gathered all the information, and how he has put in this your PPT, and that everything you will understand from him. So I request all the participants to note down all the queries, your questions. You can put on the chat box, or you can send to WhatsApp message to Dr. Hussaini sir, Khade sir, or even to me also. And so that at the end there would be a 20-30 minutes that question answer session, interaction sessions. So I am very much thankful to Department of Mechanical as well as Department of Electrical for taking pen to organize this webinar. So for that, the Dr. Bhagwat, Dr. Hussaini, as well as Professor Chandrasekhar, Professor Khade have taken efforts to organize this program. So I welcome on behalf of Sharad Institute of Technology, College of Engineering, JSR. Sir, second slide. Second. Sir, warm welcome to Sharad Institute of Technology and College of Engineering. JSR.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Even I welcome our Honorable Executive Director Anil Bagneji for this webinar. Now, just sir, I will brief about my institute. My institute established in 2009, initially with the 4 courses. At present, it is accredited with the NAC A grade for all the institute, and all our eligible programs are accredited by this NBA. Recently, we got accreditation for the 3 programs. So at present, we have total 7 UG programs of a 4-year. Total sanction intake for the first year, it is 660. Our total campus area is more than 10 acres. Investment is also very good, and we are providing 100% placement assistance. And we have experienced qualified teaching faculty, more than 20 PhD holders. We have established number of the innovation centers in collaboration with industry in the institute as well as government bodies. Next slide. So these are the programs which we offer: mechanical 120 intake, civil 120 intake, computer science and engineering 120 intake, electrical 60 intake, electronics and telecommunication engineering 120 intake, artificial intelligence and data science 60, and recently we got mechatronics 60. So this is total 660 intake we have for our institute. Next. Thank you. This is about my institute, and I welcome once again on behalf of all this your SIT community, and I request you to start your presentation, sir. Yes, sir, please.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, all. I hope I am audible to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you at the outset, Dr. Sanjay Kaur, Mr. Hussaini, and Mr. Manjit Khade. You made extra efforts to organize this program. Although we have been discussing about an opportunity to address the students for quite some time now, almost close to 2 years. Thanks to the COVID and thanks to other delays, I could not put up a personal appearance in front of you. This technology has helped us to reach a variety of people now across the country, and in the safety of my home, where I am locked down in Chennai, I am able to speak to all of you. Thank you, first of all, for giving me this opportunity. And I enjoy presenting on the topics of power and power quality and motor in particular, in which I have spent close to 40 years in my career. And thankfully, I also had opportunities to address the other components involved in the motor system as a whole. The complete drivetrain, I have familiarity in either selecting or applying or installing, commissioning, and also condition monitoring. And this helps me to continuously update myself with the technology available in the market, and also the practices adopted by many industries and manufacturers, for example. So I expect that the few slides that I have here, for example, I can break them down into 2 parts. The first part is approximately 10 slides up front, and then followed by the subject matter 40 slides. So totally around 50 slides are there. The first slides are very important to me personally because I always practice what I call fondly as funneling effect. I try to funnel the information. As you can see from the funnel, I strain the information and then zero down to the topic of our interest today. That helps me to put the audience on the topic, explain the background, and then go on to deliver the topic on which we have agreed to discuss today. The basic understanding of induction motors and applications. So let me move forward. Why am I not able to move my slides?
Just.
Okay, I think I use this click on at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then pointer options also, I'll keep the laser pointer on. Good. So like I promised, in the first 10 slides, I try to put you all in the picture, ground you so that you are able to receive whatever in the later part, the 40 plus slides that I'm planning to show to you. India has the pride of being the youngest and aspiring population presently in the world. I don't know if any one of you opened the paper this morning or listened to some news yesterday. China has agreed to allow the couples to have the third child. There was an embargo in China that the married people should not have more than 2 children. But now they have agreed to, the third child. That is a unique change in the China's policy of population control. But in our country, we did not have a great deal of control. So although we had family planning and things like that, our population kept growing. And presently, we are, almost overtaking the Chinese population. So in terms of the population, India has the unique distinction of being the youngest in the sense that almost 65% of our population is below the age of 35. So able bodies, aspirations help us to grow, help us to find new ways of doing things and also meeting new demands. The demand is going to go up and we have fortunately younger people, people with aspirations who will take things forward as we go. Just for a comparison, China is 37, average age of China is 37, and the average age of Japan is 48. The oldest population on this earth is Japan. So this is just to give you an idea that what was once considered as a weakness has now become a strength. India is also a growing economy. You must be knowing about BRICS countries. So we are one among the BRICS countries, which are all almost equal, both in terms of challenges as well as in terms of opportunities. We are a growing economy and we have already surpassed Britain, UK, to be the 5th largest economy. And as things stand, we would go on to become 3 by 2030 in the world and could possibly become number 1 or number 2 by 2050. This is the kind of growth that is set for India. This growth cannot be reversed, irrespective of whatever destabilization that we have, this pandemic or any political scenario, parties changing, all those things will not affect the growth of India.
Just I'll interrupt, sir, that both slides are visible, that next another. Just make it only present, single slide.
How do I do that?
I think that display setting is there in between center. Show task, display setting.
Display setting.
Here I can see above this your first slide.
I'm seeing 3 dots.
Somewhere it here just
drawing tools, display setting. Okay.
There check there whether it is
swap presenter view and slideshow. and then duplicate slideshow.
Here both are visible, sir. Means
Both are visible.
if you make it one only, that would better. That size would
How
be
do I
better.
do that? How do I do that? The technology is always difficult to understand. Oh, this is
Now just
now is it okay?
no, both slides. Next slide is also visible.
Sir, sorry to disturb you.
Please.
Can you increase the size? Srinivasan
Increase
sir.
this? Ah,
Yeah, please. Can you increase the size? Right side you have the right. Zoom in. You can. Zoom in.
increase
what
this.
I did, only one should be visible, sir. One sheet.
Options. Make presenter, include media, sound, remote control, drawing tools.
Here.
Share
Hanmani.
again.
Now it is. It should. We
Yes.
need full screen actually.
So how do I do that?
Just a minute.
Hide presenter view. Now it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
I understood. I made this mistake initially. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Now it's okay. Fine, sir. Fine, please. Now it's okay.
We were on this slide, yeah.
Yeah.
We were on this slide, yeah. Okay. So with the growing population and the aspiration, which I mentioned interchangeably, what is important is that India has to become an urbanized population. See, the world average is 55.3, as you can see here. World population is 55% live in urban areas, balance 45 live in rural areas. Our India's average is 34% live in urban areas, 66% live in rural areas. We have to grow to be an urban population. That is what we are poised for. So, as you can see here, urbanize or perish is the future. And this is how the India population urbanization pace will be as we move forward. Today, the urban population is less than the rural population, but as we progress by 2050, the urban population will outbeat the rural population. Most of us will live in urban cities. Just to give you an example, you know, today we have five. One minute, please. We have five cities, five major cities in the country, including Bangalore recently. By 2030, the estimate is that we will have 14 cities in India. So this is the kind of growth that we have. That means we will be moving forward with more people coming to live in urban areas or depend on urban living. So in this scenario where people are likely to live in urban cities, eking out living out of our demands from urban cities and so on, how is the future of the job viewed? Future of the job for engineering and graduates will continue to be high in demand. As you can see, there is a study. I'm using some 3-4 data shared under this study. Engineering and graduates will continue to be in high demand. As you can see, 23% of the demand as estimated is from the engineering colleges. 2019 is 23, 2020 is 31%. So this growth is unstoppable. It will carry on. Similarly, when you look at the employability of engineering graduates, it will take 5 years for you to be gainfully employed in the area of your passion or your liking. Now, I want to give you an example. If you take medical graduates, MBBS, if you look at their career path, you will notice that they have to necessarily do masters and they have necessarily put in at least 5 years of experience before they could imagine that they will be called as a doctor of some repute and start earning handsomely. Look around, look at some of your friends or your relatives or any doctor that you see. By the time he settles down in life, starts earning handsomely, the way a professional graduate has to earn, with that kind of background, he will be around 35. Same goes for engineering graduates. Do not expect to be settled in your life unless you are extraordinarily qualified. I see a lot of people going ahead and studying, doing courses in the management and getting employed in IT and other sectors. But the average engineering graduate takes 1 to 5 years to get completely trained and then settle down in the line of his liking. So in terms of demand, in the demand pool, graduates who are 5 years experienced are more in preference. So wait, this is not a 100-meter dash. An engineering career, core engineering career for engineers is a long distance marathon. It is not going to end in a flash. It is going to have a long distance. I'll take myself as an example. I am 63 and still working. So there is no question of you are retiring unless you work for a public sector or a private company where there is a superannuation. As a practicing engineer, there is no limit to your working. And in this context, if you look at the survey which said there are 5 preferred skills by employers, you will notice that these are unique skills: positive attitude, adaptability, learning agility, domain expertise, interpersonal skills. So these are the important skills that are looked at by people who hire you. So you need to develop these kind of skills apart from domain expertise alone. So these are the next 5 years emerging jobs and skills. If anything, it could give you an idea as to how you would equip yourself as you move forward after your graduation, either in employment or in further studies and so on. So data science and analysis is one area emerging, digital marketing, robotics, process automation, human-centered design, compliance. If you look at all these are areas where able-bodied jobs are not mentioned. These are areas where able-bodied jobs will be taken out, but then there will be enough opportunity available for our brain. So these are skills that you need to acquire in the next 5 years' time. So as we progress from an agriculture economy to industrial economy to urbanized economy, which is what is the target for our country by 2030. These are just here in order to meet your aspirations. I keep repeating this word aspiration because, like Abdul Kalam, our former president, said, we need a population which dreams of growth, which dreams of comfort, and so on and so forth. So from being an industrialized economy, we have to go on to become an urbanized economy. And 2030 is a cutoff period which has been set as a target for our country. So you can take a look at the power growth to appreciate some of the developments that's happening in our country. In 1947, when we got our independence, the total installed capacity was 1362 megawatt only. In 2021, which is the latest, 31st March, we have built a capacity of 382,150 megawatt of power generating capacity. This is in order to meet most of our power requirements. As you know, today the central government has claimed that they have met power requirements or demands of the entire country, including some of the remote villages. In fact, today India is considered as a power surplus country, but then the growth is never ending and it is on and on. And therefore, we need to build new capacities. There is a CEA, Central Electricity Authority document, which says that we will have to build a total of 8,17,254 megawatt by 2030 in order to meet the urbanized economy. Like I mentioned, 15 metro cities will be there, and when we have cities, there will be housing, there will be schools, colleges, entertainment, malls, theaters. A lot of electricity demand will go up. So that is what is the future of India. While we talk about the future of India, we also have to give a caution about what is actually in depletion. See, our population tripled in the 20th century. 100 years, 20th century, our population tripled. So what was used up in 19 centuries put together was exhausted in 1 century, 20th century alone, in the name of industrialization. A lot of our resources, Earth's natural resources, were exhausted. So in the bargain, what we are now left with is an estimated reserve of 130 years of coal for power generating stations. Oil is much less, 50 years, to meet the transportation and power generation in some cases. But what is in abundance is non-conventional energy generated from biomass, solar, wind, nuclear, etc. It is not difficult for us to visualize how the government of India has set a target of 1,75,000 megawatt from solar only renewable energy by the year 2022, and they are very close to achieving the target even in 2021 itself. So this is the kind of future that we are talking about. Equally important is the water footprint. Like the carbon footprint, the water footprint is also equally important to address. There is a saying that only 2% of the global water is potable. We need to treat and drink water. You cannot drink water directly from the tap or from the well. The water is contaminated and it needs to be purified. And the danger is that we will run out of water even before we'll run out of oil. If you realize 50 years is the estimated reserve for oil, and the danger is that we will lose water, potable water, in a shorter time than the 50 years period. So these are the challenges we have. And we have on one side the opportunities, on the other side the depletion of resources and the challenges. So therefore, we need as engineers to put in a lot of understanding and use the opportunities to save energy, to conserve energy, to increase our energy efficiency opportunities, and then also use all our skills that we learn in colleges and other institutions to improve what is available as a resource to us. So perhaps this is the last of the 10 slides which I mentioned to you. My aim today in front of you is not to teach you. My aim is only to interact with you, share what I have as knowledge or experience or exposure with so many years of experience with you, so that you become employable graduates. That is one danger that we have. Graduates who pass out of colleges are very, scoring very poorly when it comes to employability. So we need to train our graduates while in the colleges rather than on the job, so that they are prepared for, choosing the career that will give them the passion, that give them the opportunity to grow and then develop themselves. So in that sense, my idea today is to work as an interface between industry and academy. So I request you to kindly pay attention to the next 40 slides where I'm talking fundamental motor applications, which could give you an idea the next time you go to an industry or you go and join an industry, the way you look at these things will be different. I'm sure most of your faculties will be able to tell you this also, expand on this thought. After you get employed in industry, if you are going to go and learn from someone who's less qualified than you are, like ITI fitters or electricians, or for that matter even diploma holders, if you are going to learn from them the on-the-job experience, then I would imagine that that is something that you should pay attention to. If you learn something here itself and become more employable, you will be able to teach a few things that the people who are below you are, in that sense, people who are less qualified than you are having to teach you. So let's move forward. So I'm just giving a commentary about what are all the job opportunities available for graduates. Design engineering is one area. Production planning and supervision is another area. Maintenance is another very important area. Quality control, testing and inspection inside manufactured product or procured products. Testing and inspection is important. Procurement, there are engineers nowadays employed in the purchase department. Gone are the days when the purchase department was headed only by commerce graduates or science graduates. Today, engineers are hired. People prefer to hire engineers in the procurement department of some engineering companies. Energy auditing, a growing opportunity area for you. If you have passion, then you can go on, learn and then move forward. So these are some areas available for you to learn things. And in all these areas, a fundamental knowledge and understanding of electric motor is important. Why? Because electric motor virtually runs the world. So therefore, we need to understand what is it that electric motors actually do. A couple of slides later, I think I will be able to show you why electric motor was chosen for today's topic. The main reason for choosing electric motor is because 70% of energy in industries is fed through motors. Balance, heating, electrolysis and other loads like lighting and information technology loads constitute only 30%. So that means the single largest implement through which energy is consumed in the industry for productivity is motors, and therefore motor becomes very important for our understanding. I have shown you a market scenario here. In the next slide, I'll also show you what is the installed base of the motors. Between the two topics, you will be able to appreciate that these are the future for you. Approximately 15 lakh motors are manufactured and supplied to industries. Numbers are here. I'm not going to stick to exact numbers. Approximately 14.44, I would take it as 15 lakhs. 15 lakhs motors are manufactured and sold in the industry year on year. I've compared the last 10 years of manufacturing data as published by the IEMA, Indian Electrical Electronic Manufacturers Association. So the 10 years data more or less compares. Around 15 lakh motors are manufactured and sold in the industries. And most of these motors are AC induction motors, of which the squirrel cage low tension motors constitute around 93%. So for today's program, I'm keeping the slip ring, flame proof and HT motors out. For understanding, I'm going into the squirrel cage motors being the largest constituent of the total motor market in the country. So if you look at the motors, there are three distinctive technologies in front of us. Induction motor is the oldest. It's more than 130 years old. And it is the most robust, most understood, and most easily available and maintainable motors. Therefore, knowledge about induction motor is very, very important. There are also two additional technologies: permanent magnet synchronous motor and switched reluctance synchronous motor. These two motors are new technologies, relatively new, 30 to 40 years, not more than that. And they are slowly entering the market in some typical areas of application rather than general areas of applications. So this induction motor will continue to be responsible for, like I said, almost 90% of the energy that is being consumed in the industry through motors. In terms of maturity, on a scale of 1 to 3, induction motors are most matured with 3 as being the high. Switch reluctance is the latest. Permanent magnet is the second in order. And if you look at the high peak efficiency of these motors, again the numbers are: switch reluctance motors are number 2, permanent magnet motors are the highest in efficiency, and induction motors are somewhat among the 3, the lowest in efficiency. We know there is a slide where we are talking about global standard called IE standard, International Efficiency Standard for motors. So for meeting IE4 and above, we have only these two technologies now possible. With the induction motors, more or less the efficiency, we have reached IE4 levels, and more than this is not possible from this technology. So if the future of the world is going to demand much higher efficiencies, then we will be depending on PM and SR motors. So we'll see how, as we move forward, that will become important for knowledge and understanding. So apart from the new additions of approximately 15 lakh motors, we also should look at the installed base. So as you can see here, in terms of numbers, estimated numbers in installed base, we have a total of 2.5 crores. 25 million is 2.5 crore motors. So every year 15 lakh motors, 1.5 million is getting added to this. And there are also some motors which are getting retired. Now we have grouped this into three. This distinction will become important as we move forward. We are not discussing efficiency or utility, but we are looking at the numbers. Small motors, which is from 63 frame sizes to 132 frame size. If you are not so familiar with the frame sizes, we look at the output from 0.18 kilowatt to 7.5 kilowatt are called as small motors, and they constitute almost 83% of the population. So as you can see here, 20 million is 2 crore. 2 crore motors are small motors. Approximately 34 lakh motors are medium-sized motors from 11 kilowatt on to 30 kilowatt. Large motors, which are 37 kilowatts and above, you can include up to 350 kilowatt, are only 10 lakhs in number. 1 million is 10 lakhs. So to all these, the same capacities are getting added. Almost 15 lakh, I told you, every year is getting added to the industry. 80% plus is small motor, 14-15% is medium-sized motors, and 2 to 3% is large-sized motors. So when you go to an industry, join the industry in maintenance or in planning or any other activities, you will observe that in your inventory of that industry, 80% of the motors will be small motors, around 15 will be medium-sized motors, and 3 to 5% will be the large-sized motors. So this distinction is very important because we are going to address the future of this industry requirement. I already discussed this. Industry sector accounts for almost 70% of the energy fed through motors, around 12% electrolysis process, direct heat or induction heating is 11%, and others including lighting, computers, IT loads, printers, and so on are 8%. So therefore, motor becomes very important when it comes to handling of energy in the industries. I'll just take a small break, sip a little bit of water because my mouth runs dry occasionally. You will notice here in this picture some application areas of motors. If you go to an industry in your area or nearby, you will observe these applications. Most of the equipments are operating through motors. So in that sense, motors are called as prime movers. So you see ball mill in a cement plant or a crusher, a steel mill, a textile machine, or an agitator in a chemical factory. These are process machines. In this block, you will notice utility machines like fans, pumps, cooling towers, compressors, root blowers, and also you will notice centrifuges in sugar factories. I understand in your area sugar factories are many, so you may have gone and you may have taken pictures or observed that these are important applications. When it comes to material handling, so like I said, manufacturing or process, utility, and then material handling. You will have typical applications like cranes, conveyors, and so on.
Rooftop solar like plants to make the area available for solar power and to enhance the solar energy.
I request participant to mute your mic. Hello. Hello. Request participant to mute.
Step was taken by Gujarat government. The solar, because of the land availability is also limited. So what they did that they installed the solar panels for the canal. The state of government was first to implement the canal solar power.
Mechanical.
This is a surprise to me. Okay, I'll move on. So these are some typical applications which I showed to you. So next time you go for an industrial visit, or if you have already gone and observed, you will be able to recollect some of these applications. Motors are plenty and everywhere. So motors, in principle, the rotation is the primary motion of all machines, and in that sense, motors are the prime movers. So they convert electrical energy to mechanical energy, and motors are not supposed to be considered as electrical products. Motors are electromechanical products. So this is the first time I'm finding an engineering college offering students from both electrical and mechanical for a motor class. I appreciate this because once the electrical engineer installs the motor, connects the motor to the power supply, runs the motor, unless the shaft rotation or the output of the motor is harnessed and taken for throughput of a machine, which is the domain of the mechanical engineers, there is no meaning in installing a motor. A motor without connected to a load rotating by itself has no meaning. I hope you understand that. So therefore, very important that the rotation, being the first greatest invention of the mankind, goes on to help us for work done, useful work done, and then convert that into productivity. So unless there is a productivity, there is no job for the electrical or mechanical engineers. So the true owners of productivity are the process engineers. If it's a chemical plant, chemical engineer. If it's any other plant, it is the people who are involved in manufacturing of the end-use product. So in that sense, the electrical mechanical people go on to become very important engineers for installing and running prime mover and the secondary mover, so as to deliver the work done by the industry. So there are two slides where I'm giving you a commentary on what is a motor. Motor, like I already told you, is the most matured and saturated technology, like induction motors. 1885 was the first when induction motors were invented. They are robust, cheaper, and highly reliable. All said and done, whatever technology interventions we have, motors continue to be cheaper and very difficult for retiring them easily in our country. We are a country of great maintenance engineers. We take pride in not retiring any assets. We think the assets can be kept, working repeatedly. But today, with the growing energy cost, we have come to understand that the assets have to be retired and new assets have to be put in place so that the energy efficiency is addressed through the newer assets. Motors deliver what the load demands. I have made an emphasis on what this motor does. Motor rotates and delivers a torque at its shaft, converting the electrical energy into mechanical energy. And their whole time job is to meet the demands placed on them by the mechanical equipments like fans or pumps or compressors. So what they deliver is the torque. You must be familiar with this formula. Kilowatt is equal to 2 pi nt divided by 60,000. So short form or simplified formula is 9554. This power is equal to torque into RPM divided by 9554. Or in other words, torque is equal to 9554 into kilowatt divided by RPM. Many of the mechanical engineers will be familiar with the term torque, but electrical engineers will be familiar with the term kilowatt. This relationship has to be understood so that when you ask from your side, mechanical side, for procuring a motor, if you are able to talk in terms of torque, then it is easy for the electrical engineer to design a motor or procure a motor of the rated capacity which is required by them. So the relationship between torque and power has to be understood. Similarly, relationship between torque and voltage also has to be understood. Torque is proportional to V square. So if the voltage reduces, the torque will also reduce in square proportion to voltage. Similarly, the relationship between torque and speed also has to be understood. Torque is inversely proportional to speed. As the speed decreases, the torque will increase. One slide is there where I am trying to take you to understand how it works. Similarly, the driven loads. This is for the mechanical engineers. Loads are placing the demand for power on motors. So in that sense, loads are the ones which are responsible for consuming energy. It is not the motor. So therefore, when it comes to electrical mechanical engineers working together for the welfare of the industry in terms of optimum utilization, optimum energy and optimum throughput, both electrical and mechanical have to work together. It is not the job of the electrical engineers. I find that most of the electrical engineers are beset with the responsibility for energy efficiency just because they are accounting for energy efficiency. But the fact remains that the mechanical engineers are equally important in utilizing the motor efficiently, because 70% of the energy efficiency is through motors. So this is very important for us to understand the basic. That's why we have this program today. So parts of motors. Some of you would have probably seen in the lab or in the industry, but this cut open design is very good to visualize how a motor is constructed internally. So you can see here, you have a stator core. This is the winding area. You have a rotor. This is an aluminum die-cast rotor. You have a shaft. You have two fan covers, inner bearing cover and two bearing covers, inner bearing cover and outer bearing cover. The cooling fan is here. The end shields are here. This is the body. This is the feet. So these are some of the parts of the motors. I request Mr. Khade and Mr. Hussaini to later on share these slides to the students so that they have much time to leisurely view and also compare some of these areas. There is a term called air gap. The air gap is between the stator and the rotor. This is where the torque is produced. So some of you who are familiar with how an induction motor works, you will be able to appreciate how it is placed. So the stator and the rotor, the air gap is responsible for the torque that is produced in the shaft. So I request you to kindly spend more time on understanding this. For today's program, we'll move on by showing you this picture and allowing you to appreciate that there are so many parts built in it. Almost 90% of electric motor is mechanical. Only the winding design will be electrical. Otherwise, in terms of the construction, engineering, manufacturing, it's mostly mechanical engineers. Right. So what I have done for the purpose of this class is to use a nameplate. You will see this picture coming continuously, and I will highlight each of those parts by a green circle like this. So we will use a nameplate and explain in simple terms, both in terms of the standards that is provided for all these activities, and also in terms of variations and applications of motors. So a few slides will continue to have this nameplate. I have used a Siemens nameplate here because I work very closely with the Siemens company. So therefore, it is easy for me to find these kind of slides. Don't think I'm trying to promote a product here. I'm only trying to generically speak about an application, electric motors. So we'll go on, we'll take a look. So there's another split open design for motors: end shields, rotor, housing, stator, terminal box, non-ray bend end shield, fan, and fan cover. So this is how a typical split open motor appears. Now you looked at a three-phase motor. This green is for three-phase motors. So there is a standard which is for the three-phase motors, IS/IEC. It's called a dual standard, 60034-1. Now IS325 used to be the standard till almost 2017-18. This got changed and we adopted the IEC standard as a dual standard, IS/IEC 60034-1. There are a few engineers, few technical consultants who continue to use IS325. IS325 is retired and it's gone, it's no longer available. But the fact is most of the IS325 standards are retained under IS/IEC 60034-1. So as you can see here, the selection of motors depends on the altitude. So the height from the mean sea level. Up to 1000 meters, you can use the motor for 100% of its rated power, no derivation required. But once you start climbing to higher areas, like Ooty is 3000 to 3500 meters, Ooty in Tamil Nadu. So you need to derate the motor. You need to derate the motor to 82%. You must forgive me. I'll take about a minute to charge the laptop. My charge is going down. Just forgive me.
Okay, no issues, no issue.
Good. Yeah, the charger is back on. So this is one selection parameter. The other selection parameter is the ambient temperature and the temperature rise permitted. So if you have between 30 to 50 degrees centigrade, which is the normal temperature in most part of India, the motor can be used for its 100% rated power, no derating required. When it becomes 55 degrees centigrade, 5% derating has to be applied. So if you are talking about an industry which is 3000 meters high with a 55 degrees centigrade, which is not possible, you will find that the motor has to be derated according to altitude as well as according to the temperature rise. Wherever the temperature is below 30 degrees centigrade, it is possible to uprate, like derate, you can uprate the motor output to 107%. So these two are very important for understanding. So the general standard, like I already told you, is IS/IEC 60034-1. These are some of the standards which could be, there are more than 20 standards governing different parts and different applications of motors. But I am limiting to about 5 here for your familiarity, 5 or 6. IS/IEC 60034-1 is a general specification for induction motors in India. IS 12615 2018 is the latest revised standard for energy efficiency in our country. IS 12615 2018. This covers from 0.12 kilowatt to 1000 kilowatt, 2-pole, 4-pole, 6-pole, and 8-pole. Similarly, India is the only country which has put a restriction on dimensions, boundary dimensions of motors, so that the manufacturers will abide by common dimension standards. IS 1231 is the standard for dimensions. For example, if you look at some of the slides in the future, you will appreciate that all the boundary dimensions have to be identical in order to interchange different makes of motors. It should not so happen that different manufacturers have different dimensions and the consumer is compelled to use that particular make only. So this is in order to ensure that the monopoly restrictive trade practices are not practiced by the motor manufacturers. IS 1231 is a very important tool. Some of you who go on to do some planning or maintenance in industries in the future, please remember to download this IS 1231. You must have. This is for foot mounted motors. 2223 is for flange mounted motor. Similarly, IS 15999-2-1 is the testing standard for efficiency particularly and other performances for motors in India. IS 15999-2-1, a very important testing standard. One must be familiar with what it claims so that the manufacturers, when they supply motors, they are meeting to this standard should be ensured. Similarly, these days we are using a lot of motors with VFDs. VFDs give you an opportunity to alter your speeds according to your requirement of the process. If it's a pump or a fan, your flow can be altered using the speed variations. And when a flow is altered, pressure is also altered and the power is also altered. So in that sense, VFD offers an excellent opportunity to optimally operate the process machines as well as save energy. So therefore, for VFD, motors suitable for VFD is governed under two important standards, IS 15880 and IS 15881. In fact, these standards are called as guide for selection of induction motor when fed from VFD applications. So very important 5-6 standards I mentioned here. My intention is not to give you all the 20 standards, but side by side you will find I am mentioning some of the standards for different parts of the motors. So what is CE? You will find this marking on motors which are exported particularly from out of India. CE is European conformity, conformite European. which literally means European conformity. There are people who wrongly use the CE marking. All these you view at the bottom are wrong. CE has to be marked either like this or like this. So this has to be understood. So if you are going to go out of the country and import motors from India, which I hope you do, if it is CE certified, then the CE marking has to be understood thoroughly. Right. We move on to the insulation class. As you can see here in this nameplate, thermal class TH, thermal class 155 is class F insulation. Motor is suitable for operation between -20 degrees centigrade to ambient temperature of 50 degrees centigrade. So this has to be understood. So let's see how this is explained in this. IS 1271 is a standard that governs the ambient temperature and class of insulation. We originally had class A and class E before we had class B in the 70s. In the 90s, we moved on to class F. Today, all manufacturers offer only class F insulation. So we have class B, class F, and then class H for a limited application specific for a site. So if you look at the three types of insulation classes, the ambient temperature to which they are suitable is 40. You notice in the previous slide that the ambient temperature was mentioned as 50. That is the prerogative of the motor manufacturer. But the standard says the ambient temperature is 40 degree. This is the average for our country. And then this blue column is what is the temperature rise for each of the types of insulation classes. So for class B, it is 80 temperature rise. For class F, it is 105. For class H, it is 125. So that means a motor can go from 80 plus 40, 120 degrees centigrade for the winding. This is called winding temperature. So 120 degrees centigrade. You see there is a column at the top which says 10, 10 and 15. This 10 is called hotspot allowance or hotspot temperature margin. So when you have 80 plus 40, some parts which are blocked from insulating current or the blow of fan can be hotter by 10 degrees centigrade. Some parts are some parts which are very close to the termination of the cable can be 10 degree more. So that will make it 80 plus 40, 120 plus 130 is the total temperature. That's what is mentioned here. Similarly, for class F, it is 155. Class H, it is 180. But the fact remains that people who go for class F insulation would like to limit the temperature rise to class B level. They will have a class F insulation, but the temperature rise will be limited to class B. This you will find in some consultant specification. The reason is when you reduce the temperature rise, the life of the insulation will be higher. For every 10 degrees centigrade that is reduced for the motor, the life of the insulation will be double. Is an adage available in the industry practice. So therefore, class F insulation, but temperature rise limited to class B gives you a lot of advantage in terms of the life of the insulation of the motor. Similarly, for class H, it may be a class H insulation specifically designed for an application, but the temperature rise should be limited to class F in order to ensure that we get more life for the motor. So IS 127 is a critical IS standard when it comes to the insulation class of the motor. Now look at the efficiency class. I have circled IE3. Now there is a slide to comment on the efficiency topic. See, the globe as a whole is divided into two worlds so far as the motor is concerned. IEC world and NEMA world. NEMA is North American Electrical Manufacturers Association. NEMA is for the Americas, that is America, Canada, and some parts of South America will use 480 volts and 60 hertz motors for applications. Whereas IEC, most of Europe, India, Australia, New Zealand, and China will follow IEC. So IEC will have 400 volts, 50 hertz countries, 50 hertz countries. Now they had two different distinctive efficiency standards prior to the international efficiency standard which came. That was in 2008. This came in 2008 under IEC 60034-30. So this became a common standard worldwide for both NEMA motors as well as IEC motors. So that is what happened. From old EFF2, it went on to become IE1. EFF1 went on to become IE2. And NEMA had NEMA energy efficient EPAC motors at that time, which are similar to IE2. NEMA premium motors are similar to IE3. And NEMA premium plus or super premium motors are IE4. So this is the chronology of order of growth for efficiency for motors. IE1, IE2, IE3, IE4. IE5 is under discussion. Once IE5 is adopted in a couple of years from now, people will start expecting IE6 will be the next growth. So we will have a growth in this fashion as the technology allows for the motor efficiency to be increased. Now, protection class. On the nameplate, you will find IP55 mentioned. IP stands for ingress of protection. Some people also call it as international protection. What does this mean? The motor needs to be protected from external objects and water. So it is governed under IEC 60034-5, part 5 of the standard. Part 1 is for the general standard, part 5 is the standard for ingress protection. So you will find that the first numerical stands for the solids that will enter the motor. The second numerical stands for the water that will be splashing or falling on top of the motor. So typically IP55 is the motor which is now supplied by most of the manufacturers for totally enclosed fan cooled motors, TEFC. So IP55 means dust, powdery dust will not enter the motor. Similarly, water projected by a jet will not enter the motor. This is IP55. But there are applications where people demand higher protection from both dust and water. So you will find people asking for IP65 in some applications or IP56. So this is basically for water and moisture and dust. These are two protections. I'm just making you familiar with this so that the next time you take a look at the nameplate, you have an idea about what is each of the component punched on the nameplate. Similarly, this is although not mentioned on the nameplate, we should understand international cooling IC. You will find IC 411 or IC 416 being mentioned in some of the motors nameplate, but most of the motor manufacturers don't punch this. You take a look at it, you understand. For example, IC 411 stands for totally enclosed fan cooled motor with fan force air, force cooled or fan cooled for cooling the housing of the motor. IC 416, which is interchangeably used for some typical applications, will have a fan which is operated by a three-phase motor. So this is the fan cover. There is a fan, but that fan will be operated by a separately operated motor. So this is mostly useful for VFDs, where you might use a VFD supply from the main terminal box and use a constant 50 Hertz supply from the auxiliary motor. So these are called as IC 416. So similarly, you have a variety of application improvements nowadays. The air has a tendency to be sucked in, and therefore the grooves which are used for the fan cover are also designed so that the air will have a typical turbulent effect while being sucked into the motor, and that will help the fan to be more efficient, less energy consuming, and at the same time the motor will have a better cooling. You see here some design of the fins are also with alternate so that the air blow is not obstructed by a fin which is of the same length or the same dimension. So these are some technologies which have come for improving the performance of the motors. Now the kilowatt, which is punched on the nameplate of the motor, what does it mean? I'm now taking you through The slide, in my opinion, is a little difficult for you to understand. So I'm going to spend a little longer time on explaining this slide to you. So kindly pay attention. So you have in this slide a typical example of 45 kilowatts, which is punched on the nameplate. This is the output of the motor. And I've used them for 4 different asynchronous speeds. These motors are asynchronous motors. So they will be having slip. That means a 3000 RPM 2-pole motor will have, let's say, 2955 rated RPM. A 4-pole motor, synchronous 1500 RPM, will have 1475. A 6-pole 1000 RPM synchronous speed will have 984 asynchronous speed. Similarly, 750 RPM 8-pole will have 732 after the slip. So that is what are 4 different speeds which are popularly used in the industries. 2-pole, 4-pole, 6-pole, 8-pole. If you remember, I mentioned it earlier. The efficiencies as per the nameplate will be like this. Just observe that the best efficiency happens to be the 4-pole motor. This is 94.2. There is a slight reduction in for a 2-pole motor, reduction in 6-pole, and further reduction in 8-pole are seen here. So you will find that a lot of motors, a majority of applications are 4-pole. So when you go to the industry, you will observe that all the motors have been chosen with 4-pole. Very few motors are chosen, like in compressor or some pump applications with 2-pole, and some crusher applications with 6-pole. You will appreciate this after the next 2 red blocks. So the input kilowatt, as you can see here, output divided by efficiency is equal to input. Because we all know output divided by input is efficiency. So if you interchange and simplify the formula, output divided by efficiency is equal to input. So observe here that for a 45 kilowatt motor with 94% efficiency, 47.87 is the input power. 47.77 is the input power for a 45 kilowatt 4-pole, slightly better efficiency. 48.18 for a 6-pole, 48.65 for a 8-pole. So similarly, if you look at the torque output, which I mentioned to you in terms of a formula, in terms of Newton meter, 9554 into kilowatt divided by the RPM will give you the torque. So you will observe that as the speed decreases, the torque increases. Remember, I mentioned to you that the torque is inversely proportional to the speed. So you get more torque as the RPM rotation per minute of the motor shaft reduces. There are some people who still use the kg meter instead of the Newton meter. The 9.81 kg meter is equal to 1 Newton meter. That is the relationship. 9.81 is the G value. So therefore, some people will like to use kg meter. Here also the same. The relationship is divided by 9.81. You will get this value. So 14.83, 29.72, 44.54, and 59.58. Some people will simply use 1 by 10 instead of 9.81 accurately. They'll say 1/10 of the Newton meter is the kg meter. So this relationship has to be understood. My aim on spending with you a little extra time is because you have to understand, these parameters of the motor, so that when you see these motors in the field, either after getting employment or as an industrial visit, you will appreciate that these are the reasons why these RPMs are chosen. So what is RPM? Here in this nameplate, it is punched as 2982 RPM, which is a 2-pole motor, right? So what does this mean? The pole numbers, as you all know, 120 F by P, that will give you the synchronous speed. So for a 2-pole 50 cycles, the synchronous speed 120 into 50 divided by 2 is 3000. For 4-pole it is 1500, 6-pole is 1000, 8-pole is 750, and 10-pole is 600. You will not find 10-pole motors being offered by many manufacturers because these are very difficult to manufacture, and only under specific inquiries these are manufactured and given. One information which I want to share with you: motors are suitable for 2 times the base frequencies. So if you tomorrow use a motor with a higher frequency than 50 hertz, if the motor is designed for 50 hertz and if it is used for a higher frequency, it is permitted. But then what will happen? You have to observe. You have two curves here. The curve here is with the forced ventilation, and the curve at the top is a constant 50 hertz cooling, which I mentioned to you. So this is IC 411 and this is IC 416. So as you can see here, between 0 to 50 hertz, this is how the this is called a constant torque zone. This is called variable torque zone or constant flux zone. So the torque will be constant, but the power will increase like this. Beyond 50 hertz, which is its base frequency, the torque will decrease dramatically. So you cannot use these motors beyond 50 hertz if the torque demanded is higher. So therefore you have to oversize the motor. So this relationship has to be understood. What is frame designation of a motor? You will find all these on a nameplate. As you can see here, I'm going one by one, and also wherever possible using the standards correspondingly, very important. What is 315M? So we'll take a look. If you remember, we looked at the motors as small, medium, and large, right? So we classified them as group 0, group 1, and group 2 motors. For your understanding, please continue to denote them as small, medium, and large. So 71, 80, 90, 90 S&L, 100L, 112M, 132S, and 132M. These are called as frame heights. In the next slide, I'll explain to you what is a frame height. Designation is H. So similarly, in medium-sized motors, you have 160. Is S, M, L are short, medium, long. The core length of the rotor. Short, medium, long. So group 2, you have up to 355 frame size. Now let's take a look at this IS 1231, which I mentioned as very critical for you. So if you look at IS 1231 for a foot mounted motor, I'm going to now count A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Please follow me so that you know how to interpret them. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So let's take a look at this. A is the center to center of two feet. When the shaft is facing you, center to center of the 2 feet is A. So you can see here in millimeter. B is center to center of 2 holes in the same feet. Right? C is there is a collar in the shaft. So the distance between the collar to the center of this front hole is marked as C. This is very critical. This C dimension is very critical. If there is a fully built transmission, if the C dimension is not matching, you will not be able to replace one brand of motor with another brand of motor. So this is what I call it as monopoly restrictive practices, MRPE. So C has to be identical. That's why the standard is critical. D is the diameter of the shaft. E is the shaft length from the collar to the edge of the shaft is E. F and G are the keyway dimensions. Even this has to match. This cannot be different for different manufacturers. So F, G, H is the center height. As you can see here, H is denoted from the bottom of the foot to the center of the shaft. So like I've already said, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. These dimensions have to be identical for all manufacturers as per IS 1231. Similarly, in the case of flange mounted motors 2223, you will find mention of M, N, P. So you have N here, you have P here, and you have M for medium. So M is center to center of the flange holes. N is a step in the flange. This flange has to mate with the female flange. If it does not mate accurately, then the flange cannot be mounted. So for mounting a flange, you will have another flange here from the machine side. So this N dimension has to match. Similarly, the overall outer diameter of the flange has to match P. So M, N, P as per IS 2223 has to match. So I'm just trying to give you an idea about how to read these drawings so that tomorrow when you procure a motor, you have clarity about what will go right and what will go wrong. Now we will talk about the voltage and the frequency mentioned. Voltage and the frequency mentioned on the nameplate. So you will have 415 volts in India, plus or minus 10%, 50 hertz plus or minus 5%. What does this mean? Different countries have different supply conditions. Just take a look, only to familiarize you with this. NEMA, North American, like I mentioned, America, Canada, and some South American countries like Argentina, Peru, they have 480 volts, 60 hertz. The variations are plus or minus 10%. Combined variation of both voltage and frequency is 10%. IEC has 400 volts. Most of Europe has 400 volts. Germany, France, UK, and so on. So 50 hertz. Some European and some even East Asian countries like Thailand, Indonesia has 380 volts, 50 hertz. And in India, we use 415 volts. India, Australia, New Zealand, we use 415, 50 hertz, plus or minus 10%. Now, what we should understand is the ratio of V by F, called a flux ratio. This is the important thing for you to interchangeably use motors in our country. If you import motors, very, very difficult for you to adopt them here because V by F will be the governing. So anyone, I understand some industries have also joined here today. Anyone who is importing a whole plant or a part of machinery from outside the country, if you inherit some motors which are 400 or 380, and if you are confused about using them in India for 415 volt supply, kindly discuss with me separately. I'll be able to make you understand what is the flux ratio and how does it affect your performance. In some cases, there could be core heating or core saturation. And this has to be understood from the ratio. For example, 415 by 50 is 8.3. 400 by 50 is 8. So how will you use a 400 by 15 in India? What care you have to take? So that has to be understood. So if you get an opportunity to discuss this, please connect with me offline. Thank you. Now, what is important to understand about the voltage variation is the effect it has on the performance of the machine. Now, the only thing that is guaranteed by a motor manufacturer when he says on the nameplate 415 volt plus or minus 10% is that the rated output of the motor is available to the consumer. What is not available is the control on the parameters. Just take a look at here. The 0 here denotes the rated voltage 415. 0. You have minus 10 here and you have plus 10 here. So look at some of the parameters, what happens to them as we change the voltage. The starting and pull-out torque will be reducing if the voltage at the motor terminal reduces. It will increase when it increases. Similarly, the slip will increase when the voltage is reduced, but it will reduce when the voltage is increased. Full load current will go from one end to another end. The power factor will go from one end to another end. The efficiency is the only value which will get affected on either side of the extreme voltage variations. So in this sense, voltage variation is an undesirable component for operating a motor. So we have to be very careful. Whichever industry we go work, we must ensure that the voltage applied to the motor terminal does not vary too much in the course of a day. If it varies too much, then you will have a problem of efficiency going down, which you notice from this curve. So the efficiency goes down on both extremes. This is a unique feature. While all other parameters go from one end to another end, efficiency is the only parameter which goes reduced on either extremes of voltage variation. And in that sense, voltage variation is an undesirable element. Right. While talking about the voltage, we'll also talk about the voltage unbalance. IS 13529. This standard is available freely from the internet. Anybody can download. Some of the IS standards are now decontrolled. You don't have to pay anything for it. You can download it. IS 13529, I request you to kindly download and understand what is voltage unbalance. So they have given a sample calculation because people make mistakes, error in calculating unbalance in voltage. So read this standard at least from the angle of understanding what is the right method of calculating the unbalance in voltage. The unbalance in voltage also affects the performance of the motor. As you can see here, the permitted unbalance for the motors is only 1% in the voltage. As the voltage unbalance increases, the rated power of the motor keeps coming down. This is called the derating factor. So when you have a 2% unbalance, 5% is the reduction in the motor output. You have a 3% unbalance, almost 13% is the reduction in the motor output. So in this sense, voltage unbalance is also undesirable. Another program, I have a plan to propose to your college about conducting 4 or 5 2-hour courses which can be offered to you for a complete understanding of motors, motor selection, motor installation commissioning, motor condition monitoring, and energy efficiency audit with respect to the motor applications. So if that fructifies or if it materializes as we move forward, I will be able to take you through some of the ill effects of voltage unbalance and voltage variations with more case studies. So today I'm only introducing you this as a concept, and side by side I'm also mentioning some of the important IS standards. So what is IMB3 punched on the nameplate? What does it mean? International mounting. IM is mounting. So as you can see here, there are mounting samples shown here. So if there is a feet, it's called IMB3. As you can see here, IMB6 is feet mounted on a wall with a shaft like this, the terminal box like this. This is horizontal foot mounting. So the foot mounted arrangement can also be mounted like this. If it is B6 in this direction, B7 in this direction, V5 is foot but the shaft facing down. This is foot but the shaft facing up. The motor is hanging from the wall or a headstock. So these are some of the foot mounted motor arrangement. These are some of the flange mounted motor arrangement. You will also have foot cum flange or a B14 flange. So these are some of the arrangements that we see normally. These are some of the terminal connections. You will have a LHS or RHS. You will have a slanting for the terminal block, so terminal cover, so that it is easy for you to put your tool and tighten or loosen the screws. You might have a flying leads or floating leads, which means the termination will not be here, it will be in a junction box, and the termination will be permanently braced with the end terminals of this motor. So these are some of the mounting and TB arrangements that you will find typically in a marketplace. Good, I think I'm coming to the last 5 or 6 slides. Thank you for staying with me all along. I have been trying to be as illustrative as possible with samples and standards, and also side by side my commentaries about what is important about each of the layout terms used and the standards specified. So now I'm going into some of the application tips. Very difficult for me to talk about applications extensively in a 2-hour class. I hope we have the time, we haven't overshot the time. So 4 or 5 slides, not more than that. I'm discussing about, again, applications in terms of production, auxiliary or utility machines, and material handling or transport machines. So some ideas you will get about how it is classified. So you'll find in production, any shape change of a raw material is called a production process. So if you take a cotton, raw cotton, if you convert to yarn, the raw cotton is undergoing a shape change to yarn, and therefore that's called as production machine. All the machines which are used for converting one shape to another shape will be production process machines. So in that sense, in a limestone crusher or a cement grinder, mixer, agitator, extruder, these are applications where the shape of a raw material will get changed. to become a finished product. So these are called as process machines. There are a number of machines which help you to support the process machines. For example, transporting fluids or gas or air, or exhausting or adding cold air, taking out the temperature and so on. So you'll have fans, pumps, blowers, compressors, vacuum pumps and root blowers. These are called as auxiliary or utility machines. They don't directly involve in shape change of the machine, of the raw material, but it will only aid the process. Therefore, they are called as utility machines. Similarly, material handling or transport or applications where you will find cranes, hoists, conveyors, bucket elevators, escalators, lifts, winches, and so on. So these are some of the applications where you will find material is transported from one form to another form. So all these three and no more are the application areas for induction motors. So this classification is important for you to understand selection as well as care that you need to adopt for maintaining them. Tomorrow, when you become an industry employee, your understanding this and classification will help you to design a plan for best practices for you to manage these motors. Now, this is a commentary available on the auxiliary or ancillary or utility loads. Almost 65% of the total applications in the industries are the utility loads. You remember this: fans, pumps, blowers, compressors, vacuum pumps, and root blowers. 65% are utility loads. Only 22.5% are material processing, production. Material handling is 12.2. So in that sense, your knowledge and understanding, both electrical, mechanical put together, of the utility machines is very important, like refrigeration compressors, compressed air, fan, or pumps. So very critical to understand these applications individually. There is a publication from Bureau of Energy Efficiency. It is important for me to mention it here. Bureau of Energy Efficiency was formed in 2002. India was the second country in the world to separately enact a law in the parliament in 2001 under EC Act, Energy Conservation Act. We became the second country after America in the world to have a separate act for energy conservation, and to administer it, we have Bureau of Energy Efficiency. There was a name mentioned while my profile was introduced called EESL. EESL stands for Energy Efficiency Services Limited. It is an ESCO company, excuse me. ESCO means they also financially participate in implementing some of the policies framed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. You must be seeing a lot of LED bulbs being used in municipal corporations. Your colleges also must have undertaken this. All incandescent bulbs will have to be replaced with LED bulbs for energy efficiency. The potential available today is about approximately 40,000 megawatt. If you remember, we have a growing demand for power. At the same time, there is a restriction on the resources available in our country. So therefore, energy efficiency becomes a foil or interchangeably important resource for ensuring that we do not exhaust further resources. So this country has now agreed and signed in the Kyoto Protocol to save approximately 35% of the green gas emission, so that we also have a role as a young generation, not only to aspire and equip ourselves technologically, but also to be responsible for energy conservation and energy efficiency. So therefore, energy efficiency services is very important. Bureau of Energy Efficiency has published a lot of policy framework. I would request your college or one of your faculty to download a number of articles on pumps, fans, compressors, and refrigeration compressors as very important equipment for energy conservation, energy optimization, and future technologies. I'm saying all this in one breath so that you understand the importance. Now, I have shown here an application consideration of a total drive system. Electric motor, like I mentioned originally, is unimportant if it is so long installed and not connected with the equipment. So only when it becomes an important part of a drivetrain, which means there will be a production available, the importance of motor can be felt. So motor as a system, when placed in a system, motor as a system component will be influenced by the quality of power supply, power controls, control and protection components. Motor itself has quality and efficiencies, the method of coupling, mechanical power transmissions, the driven equipments, and the process. So that from power supply to a motion flow, seen as a complete drivetrain, motor has to be understood. And you please tell me how motor is unimportant to mechanical engineers. It becomes an integral part of a complete drivetrain, and therefore please do not leave it to electrical engineers to manage the motor. Let them manage, but your understanding must improve, and your handling of the motor in a system has to improve. And this is the idea of my requesting for both mechanical and electrical engineers to come forward and attend this program. So some of the drivetrain, I have tried to show a picture here. This is direct coupling. This is coupling through a gear. This is belt pulley coupling. This is a combination of belt pulley and gear coupling. So these are some of the mechanical power transmission elements. There is a program available for each of this topic: couplings, gearbox, belt pulley and a combination with gearbox. For each of these, there is a class available. So some of you mechanical engineers will be interested in going forward and taking advantage of these classes. Similarly, when we talk about motor, specifically for electrical engineers, there is a demand that this starting current should be restricted. Just 2 slides on this. The restriction of starting current is very critical, because if you go on drawing excess current for starting a motor, because an unrestricted starting of a motor would draw between 6 to 8 times current, its rated current, from the grid. And all this will be placed, this demand will be placed on the transformer. So you cannot go on oversizing the transformer and the cable for a difficult starting current. Therefore, traditionally there have been a number of designs and schemes for reducing the starting current. Typically we call them as reduced voltage starting or slip ring starting. Slip ring is going out of fashion. So reduced voltage starting like star delta, soft starter or VFD are recommended. So one look at the typical current will tell you as to why is it important to go for reduced voltage starting, so as to reduce the demand in current on the transformer. This is just a commentary. I am not taking a class on this, just a commentary. For a motor, successful starting is important as much as beginning. Once it is successfully started, only a commentary, just as an idea. You can expand on this with the help of your faculty, or you could ask me to expand these thoughts. I can help you. Last but not the least, there are a couple of slides on lubrication and bearing. A motor performance depends largely on these two. So although it is electric motor, the lubrication bearing could be handled by the electrical engineers or electrical engineering department staff. Mechanical engineers will lend a lot of support, understanding and knowledge on this. Lubrication, proper lubrication, periodicity, not mixing lubrication, these are very critical. This is a big subject by itself. I have slides to conduct a class for 1 full day, 2 hours. I have done it for many industries. I'm not going to bore you, just one slide. Then one more slide for the tools for handling the bearings: mounting, dismounting and greasing tools. So just a commentary. These are important when you look at a motor. Look at these also as additionally as knowledge base, which is very important for you to develop. So I think perhaps this is my last but one slide. So for some of those industries or people who are going to go into industries in the future, whenever you give out an inquiry for a motor, or whenever you look out for a motor's performance, please remember these 7 topics. What is the rated power required? What is the rated RPM on the motor? What is the mounting? What is the frame size? what is the method of coupling, what is the method of starting, and what is a driven load, what type of driven load are you using this for. These 7 informations are very important. So I deal with motors. Whenever I get an inquiry, which only simply gives me kilowatt and RPM, I write back to the customer saying, please kindly give me these details also, so that we'll be able to, develop or give you a proper offer for motors. Apart from this, there are accessories for motors. For want of time, I'm not going to deal with that. We could have another program in the future about protection accessories for the motor performance, like protection from moisture, protection from winding failure, protection from insulation failure, and protection from bearing failures, and so on. So we are not discussing it here today. I try to limit it to about 50 slides, 10 on funneling effect, 40 on the topic. So this is my last slide, where I have mentioned my LinkedIn ID and my mail ID. Next time I'm going to mask this. I'm not going to use the mobile number, because invariably I find that people call me and find me engaged in some other activity and they're not able to speak to me. So my request is, please use my mail ID or follow me on LinkedIn. I write a number of articles or small case studies in LinkedIn. I call them as caselets, C-A-S-E-L-E-T-S, caselets, up to 1,300 letters, 2 pictures. Typically, I would have brought out a case study for your consumption, whether in the industry or as future technology leaders. I expect you to give me a friend request on LinkedIn. Join me. I have about 5,000 people already following me globally. I'm willing to make my knowledge available to you freely, so you may follow me as you deem fit. Thank you very much one more time for the patience and the listening. Please take over.
So thank you. Thanks a lot for your nice presentation. It was awesome, similar to the earlier so many presentations which I attended, and you have focused these basic things in a very different way. Now our student might have realized what is basics in the motors, what we learn in the curriculum, and actually what we need to study, understand the basic things while selecting the motors. That you gave very good insights of the motors only with the help of the single nameplate of the motor. Because whenever we go to the any motor or any industry, we never focus in depth for the nameplate. Only we see what is kilowatt, or sometimes some here and there some 1 or 2 parameters that will go for that. But on the basis of the nameplate, you give presentation around 1.5 hours. That's a great thing, great start. And indeed, it was a very great presentations, which I was expecting for the students. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now I request participants or the Dr. Hussaini sir, take charge and ask questions if anybody has doubt here and there. Sir has tried his level best to make it very simpler. Still, we have so many questions, so you can start asking questions. And even will request all the students to join, give the request to the LinkedIn, so that sir has so many articles on the LinkedIn, and that would help them to get the placements also in the industry. If they go through all this your case studies, that would get benefit to all the students. Hussaini sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, good
Please.
afternoon. So really, it's a wonderful session, sir. Srinivasan sir. Because we have the experience in teaching particularly, but we have not that much experience in the industry oriented. Whatever the parameters we have seen, we heard, but we don't know exactly where, what to do, and also. Okay, really thank you, sir. Even for me also, like student. Okay, so now I'm seeing if any question, because few questions are there here, sir. I'm seeing here. Yeah, sir. Shall I ask, sir? Srinivasan, sir.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Sagar, he has given. What are the advances in low-speed motor with large torques in application as a string of juice in sugar factory in terms of efficiency?
No, I think the question is why would people choose a low RPM motor if the efficiency is low? Is that the question?
His question is mainly efficiency, sir, in terms of efficiency. So, what are the advances in low-speed motors with large torques in application, particularly in sugar factory, that is a stirring of juice?
Okay. I understand this. Yeah. See, actually, when we reduce the RPM of a motor, the torque will increase. We have two methods chiefly for reducing the RPM of the driven shaft, not the motor shaft. So even if the motor shaft is 1450 or 1475 RPM, through belt pulley, the driven shaft RPM can be reduced. So where the torque will be proportional, inversely proportional to the RPM. Therefore, reduced RPM will give more torque. If you look at the gearbox, it is called as a torque multiplier. So people use a gearbox even in sugar applications, as you can see. There will be a normal motor and a gearbox, and the RPM of the gear shaft coupled to the load will be much lower. Sometimes even as low as 12 RPM are seen. So these are methods by which the torque requirement is met. The most important feature of selection of motor is meeting the torque demanded by the load. Then comes the speed, then comes the efficiency. So the various methods are there for matching the torque required by the load. That is the reason why I said mechanical engineers should talk about their requirement in terms of torque in Newton meter or kg meter, and electrical engineers should convert that into kilowatt. So in terms of efficiency, like I already said, 4-pole is the best efficiency irrespective of whatever output of the motor. So if you are going to, when I say efficiency of a motor, I'm talking about the self losses in the motor. So if you are going to talk about the efficiency of a motor independently, then 4-pole is the best choice. Efficiency of a machine depends on a machine's own internal efficiency, self losses, and the optimum utilization of the machine's throughput. A little lengthy, but then this is the best answer I could give you.
Okay, I hope he has satisfied Mr. Sagar. And another question.
Yeah, sir. Yes. In case he is not completely satisfied.
Yes, sir. Another thing, same from Mr. Sagar only, but already you have given that answer. Can you replace gearbox in such applications? You have explained already here.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Any other question? 1 minute, sir. Yeah. What are the major considerable losses in motors?
You must have studied this in your class. There are 4 losses: stator copper loss, rotor copper loss, slip loss, stray losses. These are the 4 losses.
Even in the industry, any other loss? Because particularly from industry point of view, he has asked Mr. Sagar, what are the major considerable losses in motors?
I'm talking about the self losses of the motor. These are the 4 losses: stator copper loss or I-square loss, rotor copper loss or slip loss, iron loss. Iron loss is also clubbed with friction and windage. Iron is the flux producing loss, the power required to produce the flux. Friction is in the 2 bearings. Windage is for the fan. For the fan to operate in the shaft at the non-drive end, there will be some power. So iron, friction, windage is called as constant loss. Stator copper loss, rotor copper loss is slip loss, and stray loss. Stray loss is the eddy current and hysteresis losses. So these are quantified. IS 15999-2-1, which I mentioned, is the method of testing for efficiency, and that will segregate all these losses. That's why it's called as loss segregation method or loss separation method. We continue to use that under IEC. Whereas in the NEMA, it is direct output by input efficiency measurement. Direct output using a torque cell and input using a power analyzer. These are the 4 major losses.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question, sir. Yeah, sir. Please, sir. Please.
Just elaborate about this selection of the connection, that is DOL star delta. That is when to select which type of the connection. This is for just for the simplifications.
Okay, direct online is called as unrestricted starting or full voltage starting.
Okay.
That means if it is a 415 volt motor and the supply can take 415 volt up to the motor terminal box, it will be 415 volt starting.
Okay.
The starting current will be 6 to 8 times. Nowadays, as the efficiency increases to IE3 or IE4, for IE4, 8.9 times is the starting current. For IE3, 7.7 times is the starting current of the full load current. Okay. Now, this is applicable for certain critical applications where I would recommend for a boiler feed water pump a direct online starting. So
Okay,
full
okay.
voltage direct online starting is the quickest starting.
Correct.
The 0 to rated RPM will be reached in less than sometimes even 1 seconds in the case of a pump. And in the case of a fan, maybe 1 to 3 seconds of time. Where you require the full speed to be reached in shortest duration, you should choose the full voltage starting or DOL starting.
DOL.
Or soft starters or reduced voltage starting, where the frequency is not changed, only the voltages are reduced. For example, in star delta, we apply 1/√3, that is 230, 240 volts applied to the motor terminal for a small period of time during the acceleration, and after the acceleration is complete, the motor will reach 90% of its speed and pull out to delta. So star to delta changeover will take longer for starting. For fan, it may be 7 to 14 seconds depending on the inertia of the fan impeller. For pump, it could be about 4 to 7 seconds. So where you can afford to wait for starting to take a little longer in an application and also reduce the starting current, you should choose reduced voltage starting. VFD gives you an opportunity to reduce both voltage and frequency. And in that sense, the most useful method of starting is VFD because it will take shorter duration, not shorter than DOL, but shorter duration for starting, shorter, shorter starting current. Sometimes you can restrict it to just nameplate current, and that will leave a very limited demand on the transformer. But then there are other problems with the VFD in terms of power quality and harmonics.
Okay.
I hope that gives you
as
simple as possible.
Very nicely narrated. It's very.
Thank you.
Please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Another question, sir. Already you have covered a little bit on that. Are VFD motors economical compared to the traditional motors?
No, VFD motors are not economical in two sense. One, they are expensive. Two, they also have additional joule losses because of the VFD, PWM. So in that sense, they are not economical. But then the overall drivetrain, if it can give you 30% saving, कुछ होने के लिए कुछ पाने के लिए कुछ खोना पड़ता है is a aim ना. People use it. So you may lose 2 to 3% to gain 30%. So in that sense, VFD can be adopted. But the fact remains, if you look at only as a motor will have additional 1 to 1.5% additional losses, joule losses. VFD will have 3 to 7% additional losses. So that means as high as 7 to 8% can be the total losses between VFD and motor. But then if you get a 30-40% saving in the process equipment, then कुछ पाने के लिए कुछ हो सकते हैं.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, another question is, yeah, please, sir.
Continuation to this question, sir. Because of this VFD, so many electronics has introduced in the industry, and which has affecting on the harmonics and here and there. If you consider all together, is it less than 30% then given benefit?
Sir, as much as 55% saving in some applications are possible.
Okay. Because earlier there were no issue of harmonics, but only because of the introduction of this VFD or all this electronic gadget or the applications of electronics, it has been affecting on the harmonics, no major. Earlier the harmonic issue was not there. Is it correct or?
No, actually harmonic has been there for more than 100 years. Everybody knows about harmonic and waveform. But then the incidence of SMPS has increased the VFDs, and therefore there is a legislation. The first time a separate legislation IEEE 519 was formed in 1992, and the revision for it came in 2014. So today 2014 is what is applicable in our country. So it's a big trade-off. Sir, if I tell you, will you feel offended that we have taken 30 years to understand power factor?
Correct. Okay.
It will take probably another 10 years for us to completely understand harmonic and harmonic factor.
Correct. True, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, another question from Mr. Pawan. Is there any scope for entrepreneurship in this field with less capital?
Which field, sir? I have spoken about so many fields.
Yeah, particularly he is a power electronic guy only, basically.
Teaching or selling motors or auditing motors. What field? Pawan, what field? Pawan is asking for control.
Particularly he is a basically power electronic guy. Yeah, Pawan, you can unmute if you have.
Is he a faculty or a student?
I think he is a faculty.
Hello.
The faculty. Yeah, Pawan.
Sir, am I
please.
audible, sir?
Yes, carry on.
Sir, thank you for the wonderful session. It was very knowledgeable. Sir, I'm working on power electronics. So we are coming across various controllers which are coming, which are controlling the industry, which are used for controlling in the industries and all. So is there any scope for having such controllers? If particularly if a person builds only the controllers, so is there any scope for this, that controller can be used for any application in the industry or maybe in any specific application? But the requirement is the cost, the initial cost should be less.
So it's a very vast subject. If you remember one of the slides, I spoke about artificial intelligence, machine learning, control automation. See, these are the futures. See, so although they will take away a lot of jobs, we need not worry because a lot of automation opportunities are waiting to happen in our country. So our population is growing, our demands on the population is growing, our fields are growing, our comfort levels are growing. Today we have got remote for opening, closing screens. We have remotes for the ceiling fans. We have remotes for the AC already, and so on and so forth. So I'm talking to a particular person who says, before I go home, I love the geyser on, I love the refrigeration on, I love the air conditioner on, so on. So these are opportunities definitely in the beckoning. Definitely people like you will be able to make certain things happen in this country, which would make some of us become lazy, some of us become redundant, and some of us become rich also. So please carry on. There is enough potential available. If you would like to write to me, I'll be happy to take some specific cases, and then so much as possible to my abilities and knowledge, I will guide you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Pawanji.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think almost now it is 12:56.
What
Sir,
about students? I have not seen students asking any questions.
Yes, sir, that is only.
Almost always students don't ask questions. Students have questions, but they don't ask. Two reasons. One, they think it will be inappropriate to ask a few questions. Number two, they need time to digest. Even in classes which are conducted by you faculties, you will notice that the students don't raise their hands and ask questions.
Yes,
but they
sir.
will come and meet you separately and ask you for doubts. So
Yes,
that is the
yes,
reason why I expected that there could be some doubts which people can address me on WhatsApp or on LinkedIn or even on my mailbox. So I am open to give you as much information as possible with case examples. I want you to realize one thing. I have not gone to engineering colleges like you have, but I've come to share my knowledge with you. So therefore,
Sure,
I have a compelling reason to give you, evidence. When I talk about some subject, I have to give you evidence. That is where I started learning about the standards. I started learning about some of the published white papers and so on. For me, the compulsion to give evidence is more than for a qualified engineer. So in one sense, it's a limitation. In another sense, it's an opportunity for me to read, study, understand, develop, ask, clarify, and then share. So if I'm saying I have shared more than 100 caselets, you must imagine that I'm also ready to be taunted, tormented, and tutored by some of my followers. I don't mind doing it. So in that sense, I'm welcoming any contacts with me in any of the channels if you have doubts. And I'm sure you will benefit, I will benefit. Thank you.
yeah, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Really, it's fortunate for us. Yeah. Now I'm requesting Mr. C.S. Patel, Chandrasekhar Patel.
Before vote of thanks, just I will do one thing. Just so what sir say is that we can have some sessions on the motors.
Yes, sir.
Jay sir will sit together at a department, will discuss with mechanical and electrical, and we'll go for 1 or 2 days sessions like this, 3 or 6 hours or 12 hours like this. And accordingly, we'll prepare plan for the motors actually, starting that already you are initiated with the basics. And we'll go with the other details of the motor so that whenever student face the interviews, that will help them for the placement or they can become an entrepreneur. Accordingly, we'll plan if possible online. And if suppose time that because of if the situation changes, we'll invite you offline also, so that within 2-3 days, if possible, with your busy schedule, we'll plan either online or the offline. That would be definitely beneficial to the students, because whatever knowledge you gain with this big span of the 4 decade, that would definitely helpful to them, because we are getting so many insight from your webinar. I think this is my 10th, might be the 10th or 12th webinar, I don't know, since last 1 year. You have given so many nice inputs, so many, I'm getting that benefit out of it, and I hope you will cooperate, will support to our institute, as well as my personal doubts. Whenever I ask, I call you, immediately you respond for all this, all our queries. So accordingly, we'll plan all these things, and even what we'll do, we'll show this video because recording to our students, and we'll ask them to prepare some questions, and that will send through the WhatsApp or through the LinkedIn. They will ask, or if possible, one more session we'll have on the question answers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank
sure.
you. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure, sir. We made it happen finally.
After long follow-up. Sir,
Yeah.
Hussain, sir.
Yeah, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr.
Sir,
C.S.
as
Patel. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Yes.
You can proceed.
As a token of love and respect, myself, Chandrasekhar Patil, as an organizer, take this opportunity to offer vote of thanks to our today's dignitary, Mr. J. Srinivasan, sir, from ACE Enablers LLP, Chennai, who has enlightened us with today's webinar on basics of induction motors and applications. We could get better insight into given 5 to 6 Indian standards and world common efficiency standards, ingress protection IP 55 particularly, significance of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and also regarding required specifications in selection of motors, that is induction motors. It is honor and pride to thank Honorable Shri Anil Bagne sir, respected Principal Dr. S.A. Khote sir, for their constant encouragement and support. And last but not least, I thank all the organizers, faculty members, and also participants who attended this webinar. Thank you one and all.
Thank you. I would like to have one word.
Please.
Yeah, please.
You have in the chat box put the feedback forms from the students and faculty.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay.
I would like to get a feedback.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Summary also. I don't have to see the individual feedbacks. I want the summary also.
Yes, sir. Sure, sure.
Sure, I'll share the inputs.
Yeah, we will
Remember,
share.
this is recording as and when it is ready for after editing and things like that. Kindly share with me.
Yeah, yes, sure, sir, sure.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Even
day.
I thanks that sir. Even I thanks that another person who joins from the UAE. I think
Yeah, yes.
I don't remember
Sagar.
his name. One person. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sagar,
Sagar.
Sagar, you are there? Hello.
Who has joined?
Sunil Kanal. Are you
Sunil
there?
Kanal, okay.
Okay.
Majanta,
Sunil Kanal.
Majanta.
Yeah, from UA. Sunil
Sunil.
Kanal.
I am patiently listening to Mr. Srinivasan and his slides, and it has been a wonderful presentation, Mr. Srinivasan. Glad to connect with you once again. Thank you very much for sending this information through LinkedIn, through which I joined. And thank you very much to all of you for organizing this and giving us an opportunity, and basically for me to refresh my basics. It was so wonderful to go through the sites. Thank you very much once again.
Sunil is a leader in the industry and he's attending a basic program for students.
No, but it is there is no age bar for any knowledge, sir.
I know.
I'm still a student.
We call it as lifelong learning. We teach students about under the outcome-based education. This is one component. It is a lifelong learning. Always we
Correct.
should be a student, and you have proved it, sir.
Thank you very much.
Correct, sir.
Thank
So
you,
nice,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye,
much.
sir. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, JS sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once
My
again,
pleasure, sir.
superb session it was.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please, sir. Sir, now you can conclude, sir.